I invited a friend over for supper. What, are you crazy? The house is in a mess. I haven't been shopping. All the dishes are dirty, and I certainly don't feel like cooking a fancy meal, she said. I know all that, replied the husband. Then why, she asked, did you invite your friend over for supper? Well, he exclaimed, because the poor fool's thinking about getting married. At a cocktail party, one woman said to another, aren't you wearing the wedding ring on the wrong finger? And she replied, yes, I am. I married the wrong man. Joe had asked Bob to help him out with the deck, building it, after work, so Bob went straight over there after work. And when he got to the door, Joe went straight to his wife, gave her a hug, told her how beautiful she was and how much he had missed her at work. And when it was time for supper, he complimented his wife on her cooking, kissed her, and told her how much he loved her. And once they were out on the deck, Bob and Joe, and talking, Joe was surprised that Bob had made such a fuss over his wife. And so Joe said that he had started this about 6 months ago, and it had revived their marriage, and things couldn't be better. So Bob thought he'd give it a try. And when he got home, he gave his wife a massive hug, kissed her, and told her that he loved her, whereupon she burst into tears. So Bob was confused and asked why she was crying, and she said, this is the worst day of my life. First, little Billy fell off his bike and sprained his ankle. Then the washing machine broke and flooded the basement, and now you have come home drunk. The wife asked her husband, what do you like most about me, my pretty face or my sexy body? And so he looked at her from head to toe and replied, I like your sense of humor. Soon after marriage, a lady's husband stopped wearing his wedding band. And she asked, why have you stopped wearing your wedding band? And he replied, it cuts off my circulation. And she replied, that's what it's supposed to do. One more. The wife asked her husband, what are you doing? The husband replied, nothing. The wife then remarked, you've been reading our marriage certificate for over an hour. And the husband murmured, I was looking for the expiration date. Cheryl Call has counseled thousands of people worldwide through her private practice and has written a number of best-selling books. And recently she wrote, and I quote, my clients come to me with a host of erroneous beliefs that inform their anxiety and confusion regarding their upcoming marriage. She says, sadly, very few of us carry accurate beliefs about what love and marriage are really about. Instead, we consciously or unconsciously live our lives according to the models propagated by the media. We grow up watching Disney movies and popular television shows where we see a basic equation for love, portrayed as the people meet, they play a game of chase, fall in love, get married. And inherent in this formula, she said, is the assumption that by the final stage, getting married, every conflict, quirk, annoyance, and issue has been resolved. We may watch a relationship unfold for several years on television, but by the time the couple finally gets married, the conflicts are resolved and the show usually ends. And therein, she says, lies the false message. Your relationship should be perfect at the time of the wedding. She says nothing could be farther from the truth. Like all courageous endeavors, marriage can and must evolve over time. We enter into it with the greatest of intentions, hope, and commitment. We spend enough time together to determine if the partnership is a good match in terms of shared values, enough connection, and some ability to resolve conflict and no serious red flags. And then we jump off the wedding cliff, she says, together with a leap of faith. For we know at the onset what the final outcome will be. Marriage, like life, is ultimately a mystery. And the intricacies of this mystery, the strands of the story that comprise the final tapestry of one's marriage, can never be known on the day that you say, I do. She goes on to say, what interferes with most people's capacity to experience the wedding transition free of anxiety are their expectations. The bride-to-be expects to feel happier than she's ever felt in her life during her engagement. And the groom-to-be expects to be able to let go of his bachelor days. End quote. May I suggest that we're all victims of miseducation, which ultimately boils down to a kind of idolatry. Wrong or overemphasized priorities are the object of this miseducation. This miseducation results in life being more difficult and painful than it might be. In fact, this miseducation inflicts pain on all of us, and all of us are miseducated. I always find it encouraging when a couple wants to renew their marriage vows. It's not a necessity, but it does say something about their love and commitment to one another. They have gotten a certain amount of experience under their belt, so to speak, that it has informed them about what marriage is, isn't, and can be. For younger couples getting married, it's a different matter. And though I may preach at their wedding, what they will remember is probably next to nothing. I could just as well read from the day's newspaper, and that would have as much meaning for them. And frankly, that's probably okay, because marriage is not really about ideas or ways of getting along, as it is more than anything about intention. And it may shock you to hear me say that, since you probably thought I would say marriage more than anything is about love. And certainly love is important. I would suggest, though, that in our modern culture, love is the okay of the people, not religion, as Karl Marx once said. Yet when we look to reflect on love, what it is, it seems to me that it begins to get kind of fuzzy, kind of indefinable. Can you touch it? See it? Well, certainly we view certain actions or things or gestures as symbols of love, a dozen roses, a special dinner or gift, or even the words, I love you. But you know, if those gestures or gifts are followed in the weeks or the months or the years to come by a growing sense of distance between the husband and wife, then do these gifts and gestures really say, I love you at all? I think not. Which is why I say intention may be the most important component of a marriage. Chuck and Carol have been married for 25 years now. They know something about intention. They know something about hanging in there, as the marriage vows put it, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. And certainly these few words don't begin to describe the half of it, do they? Richer for poorer is more than finances, though poor finances can challenge a marriage like nothing else. We can be rich in self-esteem, or we can be poor in self-esteem. We can be rich in our relationship with our children and simply poor in our relationships with our children. Maintaining a marriage in spite of the bad requires intentionality. The heated hormones of young love don't have near the muscle of intention. But let's be honest. There are times when even the best of our intention begins to weaken or to feel overwhelmed. What are we to do then? Significantly, it is not just a couple's intention that unites them together. It is God's intention that unites them together. And so recall in the book of Genesis chapter 2, Jesus puts it this way in Matthew 19. Have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they're no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate. Now, we could debate and discuss all day long why marriages fail, while the two apparently did not become one flesh. When it comes to considering the intention of the married couple, especially when that intention begins to either weaken or even be exhausted, It is important to remember that it is God's intention that a man and a woman become husband and wife. The couple, in other words, is not left to their own resources to make their marriage work. You may have heard me tell the story before, but it bears repeating in this context this morning. Morton Condrate was one of the best-known journalists in Washington, D.C. He was a regular member of the McLaughlin Group and the Beltway Boys television shows. In 1987, his wife Millie was diagnosed with Parkinsonism. And she told Mort, and I quote, "I've seen Parkinsonism. It's a horrible disease. I won't be able to talk. I won't be able to walk. I won't be able to swallow. I won't be able to eat. And you'll have to take me to the bathroom. I'll be totally dependent. You won't love me anymore. You'll leave me," she said. But you see, Mort deeply loved Millie, and he continued to care for her and to love her. Describing their ordeal, he wrote, "You just ask God's help every day, multiple times a day. I couldn't do this without God's help. I pray for help and strength and Millie's deliverance all the time. He continues, I simply could not do this without feeling that I was doing God's work in a small way. I've asked God innumerable times," he said, "so what is my purpose here on earth?" And hoping that he will add a new and grandiose dimension to this, which he never does, the message always comes back the same. Your job here is to take care of Millie. Morton Condrate had discovered the very resource of which Jesus speaks to us in this morning's gospel. It is that resource available for us to sustain our intention for making a marriage work or living our lives when we have become weakened and exhausted. Jesus says to us, "If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." And the psychology here is not unique or strange, though we've usually heard it from a different perspective. We're taught as children that if we don't obey our parents' commandments, we're taught to feel this very unpleasant thing called guilt, that nagging sense of having done something wrong, that nagging sense of having pride. This feeling of guilt, whether false or not, comes about from us having done something. The opportunity to know Jesus' love also is a matter of doing something. Jesus' use of the word abide may have caught our attention. It may sound rather passive, but in fact it is a call to do something. Jesus is telling us that if we wish to abide in his love, we will keep his commandment. By keeping or not keeping Jesus' commandment, we can intentionally abide in God's love or not abide in his love. This is not to say that Jesus stops loving us, rather it says we have elected to step outside his love. And what is his commandment? "This is my commandment," he says, "that you love one another as I have loved you." It's a tall order to love others as Jesus has loved us. Could we, as Jesus did from the cross, say, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do"? How do we love a spouse, a parent, child, a friend, or enemy who may have done harm to us that's virtually irreparable? Have you been there? Have you found yourself asking how you can possibly go on loving someone who presumably is close to you, whom you trust, and who should treat you with the utmost of respect, tenderness, and love? If you have found yourself in that dilemma, crisis might be the better word, then you know that the challenge of loving someone might almost threaten your very existence. The gospel we heard this morning is one of the options offered by the prayer book for those getting married. It was selected by Chuck and Carol. The lectionary for this Sunday would have us read from John 2, 1 through 11. And in that, we hear about the wedding at Cana of Galilee. This was Jesus' first sign of miracle, wherein he turned water into wine because the wine had run out. There are several ways in which Jesus' turning of water into wine might be understood. When it comes to marriage, when it comes to any time in our lives where things have run out, time, energy, money, love, strength, patience, health, then the message is that if we turn to Jesus, he can turn whatever has run out into an abundance we never imagined. When the time, energy, or love has run out, when we turn to Jesus, we can expect something special, something more, something fulfilling. We can expect in his own words that his joy may be in us and that our joy may be complete. So Carol and Chuck, we thank you for sharing with us this morning your intentional love for one another in holy matrimony. We thank you for being an example of God's love for us in Jesus. We thank you for giving us the opportunity to renew our love for our spouses, our family, our friends, and maybe even our enemies. We thank you for reminding us that God loves us so much that he gave his only begotten Son who gave his life out of love for us. And that's no joke. Carol and Chuck, we wish for you another 25 years of love for one another in holy matrimony. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.